The twin suns were setting over the red mountains of planet Zalara. The ground was dry, cracked from heat, and the wind carried the scent of battle. Smoke still rose from broken machines, burned trees, and fallen warriors. The war between humans and the Zalarian tribes had finally reached its bloodiest stage. Ziraya, the daughter of the High Matron, stood tall on a cliff, her silver armor shining in the fading light. Her long purple hair was tied back, her golden eyes cold as she watched a human soldier struggle to climb up the rocks below. He had survived the crash of his ship. He was alone, weak, lost, and yet alive. One clean shot, she whispered, raising her bow. The arrow she prepared was not ordinary. It was the bond arrow, carved from the sacred tree of her people. Once fired in war, it meant the enemy had broken their holy boundary. Tradition said, if a target caught it with bare hands instead of dying, he must be accepted as a life-mate. But no one had ever done that. Ziraya didn't care. No human was fast enough. She aimed, breathed, and let go. The arrow flew like lightning straight toward the human's chest. Then something impossible happened. The man looked up, just in time, and caught the arrow in midair with one hand. Ziraya froze. Even the wind went silent. Evan Carter, a young human engineer turned soldier, didn't even understand what he had done. His palms stung from the impact, but he was alive. He looked up at the alien woman standing above him, not knowing he had just triggered a law older than time. Ziraya dropped her bow. No, this cannot be, she whispered, backing away. Her guards came running. One of them saw the human holding the arrow and gasped. He caught the bond arrow. Ziraya's heart sank. He didn't mean to. He doesn't even know what it is. But the guards didn't care. Rules were rules. One spoke firmly. By sacred tradition, he must become your mate. The arrow has chosen. Ziraya shouted. He's a human, a trespasser. I meant to kill him. The guard shook his head. You failed. And now, the ritual must begin. Far below, Evan was still trying to climb. He didn't know what was happening. But something about the alien woman's wide eyes told him he was in deep trouble. Minutes later, warriors came down the hill and surrounded him. Evan held up both hands, not wanting to fight. He was injured, tired, and hungry. Please, I don't want trouble, I'm just trying to survive. One guard said, You survived more than you know, human. They dragged him up the hill toward Ziraya. She stood still, arms crossed, eyes blazing with mixed emotions, anger, fear, and something she wouldn't name. As Evan stood before her, the sun dipped below the mountains. A red glow filled the sky. Do you know what you've done? Ziraya asked coldly. No, Evan answered honestly. But I think I made a mistake. You caught this, she said, taking the arrow from his hand. This is not just a weapon, it's a symbol. By our oldest law, it means you are to be my husband. Evan blinked. I'm sorry, what? Ziraya glared at him. It's a stupid rule, but sacred. My people will force it. They believe the gods choose the one who catches the arrow. Evan tried to smile. Maybe I should have just let it hit me. No, she said sharply. Because now I'm stuck with you, human. As the tribe began building a ceremonial fire, the whispers started. A human, married to the war princess. He must be special. Or cursed. Ziraya felt her pride crack. She had trained all her life to be strong, to lead, to never bend to outsiders. And now? She was being forced into marriage with a soft-skinned, fragile human who had stumbled into her world. I will not marry him, she growled to the priestess beside her. The priestess whispered back, If you break the bond, you break the will of the gods. You'll be exiled, or worse, you'll lose your name. Ziraya looked at Evan, who sat beside the fire, holding his side where a bruise was forming. He didn't look like a warrior. He looked confused, tired, But he had caught the arrow. The arrow never lies. Her mother, the High Matron, would arrive in 3 days to bless the bond, or punish them both. Xenia clenched her fists. 3 days, she whispered. I have 3 days to end this. She didn't know how, but she refused to let her destiny be changed by a mistake, or by a man with soft eyes and steady hands who caught her deadliest shot. The fire crackled in the heart of the alien camp. Strange symbols glowed on the stones around it, marking the area as sacred ground. Warriors stood in a circle, their faces hidden behind carved bone masks, and in the center of it all sat Evan, tired, bruised, and confused. He had no idea that catching an arrow would change his fate. Not far from the fire, Princess Xenia stood under the moonlight, arguing with the tribal council. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned. This is madness, she said. He's not one of us, he's human. The elder priestess, tall and draped in glowing cloth, nodded slowly. Yes, and the gods must have a reason. The arrow chose him. Xenia's teeth clenched. I chose him as a target. And still, the priestess replied, he caught it, barehanded, in front of the sacred cliff. No Xelarian has ever done this, he is now bound to you. Behind them, some warriors watched with anger in their eyes. One stepped forward, Vekrol, the strongest fighter of the clan, and the one who had always wanted to marry Xenia himself. This outsider is not worthy, Vekrol growled. He is weak, soft. He doesn't even know our laws. He does not need to know them, the priestess said. The bond was sealed. I challenge him, Vekrol snapped. Let me fight him under the moons. Let the gods decide who she marries. Xenia turned. No. You think I want either of you? But her words fell into silence. Tradition had been broken. Now tradition would be used to test it. That night, Xenia stood outside Evan's tent. She didn't want to be there, but duty pushed her feet forward. She pulled aside the cloth and saw him lying on the floor staring at the ceiling. He sat up quickly. You again? I'm here because you caused this, she said sharply. I didn't know catching an arrow meant marriage, he replied. Where I'm from, it just means good reflexes, she snorted. On my planet, it means you belong to me. Evan raised an eyebrow. And how do you feel about that? Xenia looked away, like I want to erase the last 24 hours. There was a pause. Evan stood up slowly, rubbing his shoulder. So, what now? She crossed her arms. My people are angry. One of them wants to challenge you, fight you, to prove you don't deserve the bond. I'm not a fighter, Evan said honestly. I know. That's why you'll die if you stay. He looked into her eyes. Then help me escape. Xenia hesitated. She should have said no. She should have let him face Vekrol and die. That would break the bond. It would solve everything, but for some reason she didn't move. I'll think about it, she said, then turned and left. The next day, the village gathered for a council meeting. Warriors, priestesses, even the children, all came to see the human who changed tradition. Evan stood between two guards. His hands were bound, but his head was high. Xenia watched from a distance, her heart heavier than she expected. She was born to lead warriors, to fight, to destroy. But now, she had to decide whether to protect this strange man who didn't belong. Elder Makari raised a staff. By our law, the bond is sacred, but the blood right may still be claimed. If another wishes to challenge the human, let them step forward. Vekrol did. His armor shone black under the sun. His claws were sharp and his eyes full of fire. I claim the right, he said, to break the bond and win the princess. Xenia shouted, I do not choose either of you. Elder Makari nodded. That is not the question. The gods already chose. Vekrol smiled. Then let the gods watch me crush this outsider. The challenge was accepted. The fight would take place in 2 days, under the twin moons. If Evan lost, he would die. If he won, he would remain bound to Zariah by law. No one expected him to survive. That night, Evan sat by a small fire outside his tent. Zariah came again, silent. "Still thinking?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "I'm thinking you're more trouble than you're worth." Evan gave a small smile. "Maybe, but I didn't ask for this either." She looked at him closely. His hands were burned from the crash. His face was tired, but his eyes, steady. "You're going to die if you fight Vekrol. I know." "Then run," she said quietly. "I'll leave the gate open tomorrow." Evan nodded. "Why are you helping me?" Zariah's voice was soft. "Because even if I don't want you, I don't want your blood on my hands either." They sat in silence for a while. Neither of them knew that eyes were watching from the shadows. Vekrol had heard everything, and he had no plans to wait for the official fight. Night fell over the Zalarian camp, and the jungle beyond it whispered with distant howls. The moons hung high, casting silver light over everything, even over the secret plan forming between a proud alien princess and a lost human man. Zariah had left the eastern gate unlocked, just as she said. She didn't say goodbye. She told herself, it didn't matter. He was just a human, an accident, a mistake. Once he left, her bond would break. She would be free. And yet, she couldn't sleep. She sat on the roof of the watchtower, eyes locked on the jungle's edge, waiting to see movement, a shadow, a sign he had gone. But nothing came. Meanwhile, deep inside the camp, Evan hadn't left. He stood near the gate, hand on the metal handle, heart racing. He could hear the jungle calling him. Escape was right there. But still, he didn't move. His legs wouldn't walk away, because he knew, if he ran, she would suffer. Zariah would be punished for breaking tradition, maybe exiled, maybe worse. He didn't owe her anything, but something inside him, a feeling he didn't understand, told him he couldn't leave her like that. And then, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. Too slow. A shadow tackled him to the ground. A blade scraped across his shoulder. Pain flashed in his side. Vekrol, the warrior, had come early. "You think you can run, outsider?" Vekrol growled. "You think you deserve her? You're nothing." Evan tried to fight back, but he was no match. Vekrol lifted him and slammed him into the ground. Dust filled the air. Evan gasped, blood in his mouth. Then, Zariah's voice thundered across the courtyard. "Stop!" She jumped down from the tower like a hawk, spear in hand, armor half-clipped, face glowing with fury. "You dare attack him before the challenge?" Vekrol didn't flinch. "He was escaping. That breaks the bond. I only acted before he brought shame to your name." Zariah stepped between them, her weapon pointed at Vekrol's chest. "You bring shame by striking a wounded man in the dark." Evan, still on the ground, coughed. "I wasn't escaping." Both of them looked at him. "I was thinking," he groaned, "that maybe I should stay." Zariah's eyes widened. "You're insane." "Probably," Evan muttered. Guards arrived, lanterns glowing, weapons raised. The elder priestess followed, her expression unreadable. "What is the meaning of this?" she asked coldly. "Vekrol attacked before the match," Zariah said, not moving her spear from his chest. "That breaks your law, not mine." There was a long silence. Then the priestess nodded. "Vekrol will be punished. The match will continue. But if the human lives, he will be named your true mate, and you will both be bound forever." Zariah lowered her spear. Vekrol growled but obeyed. The guards dragged him away. Evan struggled to sit up. "You're bleeding," Zariah said, kneeling beside him. "I've had worse," he said with a half-smile. "Why didn't you leave?" she whispered. He looked at her, then glanced at the broken gate. "Because I didn't want to leave you behind." She didn't answer right away. Because, in that moment, something in her heart shifted. The next morning the sky was gray. A storm was coming. Evan sat inside the healer's tent while Zariah stood by the entrance, arms folded. "You can't beat Vekrol," she said simply. "He's trained in combat since birth." "I fixed warships since I was 16, Evan replied. "Totally the same." She almost smiled, but didn't. "You're going to get yourself killed." He shrugged. "Maybe. But then again, I caught your arrow. That's something." She looked at him seriously. "The ceremony isn't just a fight. It's also a test of spirit. You don't have to win with strength. You have to prove your soul is stronger." Evan blinked. "Okay. And how do I do that?" Zariah leaned closer, her voice quiet. "You don't fight like a warrior, you fight like a human. Think, adapt, survive. Use the part of you that I've never seen in my people." Evan nodded slowly. "All right, I'll try. Any tips on not dying in the first 30 seconds? She handed him a small round object, glowing faint blue. "What's this?" he asked. "A pressure bomb," she said. "Use it only when you're about to lose." He stared at it. "This is cheating." "This is surviving," she said coldly. "And if you die, I'll be forced to marry Vekrol or worse." He slipped the bomb into his belt. "No pressure then." That evening, the arena was lit by flames. The tribe gathered on the cliffs. The challenge began. Evan stepped into the ring. Vekrol stood across, armor gleaming, teeth bared. Zariah sat in the royal chair, eyes locked on the human who could change her fate. As the horn blew and the battle began, everyone waited for one thing. Would the human fight for freedom? Or something deeper? The arena was silent. Even the wind held its breath. Evan stood at the center, breathing hard, arms bruised, blood dripping from his lip. Across from him, Vekrol growled like a beast. His blade gleamed under the moonlight, already stained red. But Evan hadn't fallen. Not yet. He had no armor, no combat training, just quick thinking, and the pressure bomb hidden at his side. Zariah watched from her seat among the elders. Her nails dug into her palm, heart thudding painfully. She didn't know what surprised her more, Evan still standing, or the fact she wanted him to win. The tribe watched with disbelief. A human was lasting this long? Against Vekrol? The elder priestess rose, staff glowing. "Enough," she said. "This is not a test of slaughter." Vekrol stepped back, annoyed. "He still breathes." "Barely." The priestess raised her voice. "Then let the sacred flame judge his soul." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Zariah stood. "You're calling the flame ceremony now?" "Yes," the priestess said. "We do not choose who she bonds with. The flame does. If it rejects him, the bond ends. If it accepts him, he is one with your spirit." Evan wiped blood from his mouth. "Okay. Sounds hot. What do I do?" Zariah stepped down from her seat, walking slowly toward him. "You kneel. You breathe. You let the fire touch your heart. That's safe?" he asked. "No," she replied. "It burns liars alive." Evan blinked. "That's great news." Soon after, the ceremony began. In the sacred cave behind the arena, a large stone bowl was placed between Evan and Zariah. The priestess lit it with a whisper. The flame inside roared high, glowing white-blue. It wasn't normal fire. It shimmered like liquid light and pulsed like a heartbeat. "The flame of joining," the priestess said. "It reads the truth within you. If you carry doubt, fear, or dishonor, it will know." Evan looked into the fire. It felt alive, like it was staring back. "You must reach inside it," the priestess said. "Excuse me?" Evan asked. "Like with my hand?" "With your soul," Zariah said quietly. He turned to her. "You really believe in this?" Zariah didn't answer. She only nodded once. Evan took a deep breath. Then he reached forward and placed both hands into the flame. Pain. Not burning. Something deeper. Like heat and memory mixed together. It rushed into his chest, into his mind. He saw flashes of his life, his mother's smile, his first broken ship engine, the day he joined the war, the moment he crashed on Zalara, and then he saw her, Ziraya. Vision of her standing alone, proud, terrified of what others couldn't see, of being forced to carry a title she never wanted, a mask she couldn't remove. The flame pulsed once, twice. Then, calm. Light flooded the chamber. The fire wrapped around both Evan and Ziraya in a circle. Then, it turned gold. The crowd outside gasped. Ziraya's breath caught in her throat. Gold was rare. Gold meant something ancient, something binding. The priestess dropped to her knees. "The flame has chosen," Vekrol shouted. "This is a trick." But the others bowed. Evan stumbled back, barely able to stand. His arms shook, but the fire didn't burn him. Ziraya stepped toward him, staring in disbelief. "How did you survive that?" He gave a weak grin. "Maybe I'm just charming." She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Later, that night, Evan sat on a stone bench near the edge of the camp watching the stars. His shoulder throbbed, but his thoughts were louder than the pain. Ziraya walked up quietly and sat beside him. They didn't speak for a while. Finally, Evan asked, "So, what does this mean now?" Ziraya stared at the sky. "It means the bond is real." "Because of the flame?" "No," she said. "Because it touched something in both of us." He glanced at her. "And what if we don't want it?" She looked back. "Then we live as strangers, forever connected by something we didn't choose." Evan sighed. "Great. Sounds romantic." She smirked for the first time. "You really are annoying." He smiled. "And you really are impossible." They sat together in silence again. Not friends, not lovers, but something in between. Then she stood. "Tomorrow, the tribe will begin the wedding preparations. You'll be given robes, ceremonies, songs you won't understand." "And you?" he asked. "I will do what must be done." "But what do you want, Ziraya?" She didn't answer. She walked into the shadows without turning back. Evan watched her go, not knowing whether he had won her heart, or only the fire's approval. The drums echoed through the valley, loud, slow, heavy. The wedding of the bonded was being prepared. Solarian flags waved from every post. Sacred petals were scattered across the main path. The tribe buzzed with activity, dancing between honor and disbelief. A human was to be joined with their princess, and not everyone was pleased. In a dark tent near the cliffside, Vekrol stood with clenched fists and blood in his eyes. His pride had been shattered in front of the entire clan. A human, barely a soldier, not even a proper warrior, had survived both the challenge and the sacred flame. Now that outsider would wear the royal bands, and Vekrol would do anything to stop it, even spill blood during the ceremony. Elsewhere in the ceremonial hall, Evan stood before a mirror of polished obsidian. Alien cloth was wrapped around him, deep blue robes with golden thread. A strange energy crystal was tied around, his neck pulsing with faint light. He looked like royalty, but inside he felt like an imposter. Ziraya entered the room without a word. She wore her war princess armor, silver plating layered over deep purple fabric. Her face was calm, her steps were steady, but her eyes, they looked distant. "You look," Evan began. "Wrong?" she offered. He smirked. "I was going to say brave, but sure, let's go with wrong." She didn't smile. Instead, she looked down at the sacred bands lying on the table, 2 thin metallic rings, one for each of them. When placed on the wrist, the metal would bond with their blood, tying them together in spirit. Ziraya picked one up slowly. "This band will burn for a moment when it links to your heart," she said softly. "If you feel pain, don't flinch." Evan raised an eyebrow. "Is that a warning?" "It's tradition," she replied. "Pain proves you are alive." He nodded. "I've had enough pain to prove I'm very alive, thanks." She looked at him then, really looked. "You don't act like the others," she said. "Which others?" "The warriors, the conquerors, the ones who think victory means power." Evan shrugged. "Maybe I think survival means something too." Zariah turned away, but her voice was quieter now. "This bond is supposed to be a gift from the gods, but it feels like a trap." Evan stepped closer. "Then let's escape it together, not by running, but by changing what it means." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she gently placed the ring in his hand. But while the royal tent prepared for union, Vekrol had begun his plan. He met with two loyal warriors, both who believed the bond was a betrayal to their race. One of them handed him a hidden blade, thin, curved, coated in a toxin that could stop a heart in 10 seconds. "The moment the bands touch," Vekrol whispered, "I strike. I kill the outsider. And the bond dies with him." The warriors nodded. The traders moved through the shadows of the celebration, disguised among the dancers and guards. Waiting. Watching. Night arrived. The wedding platform was lit with floating orbs of golden flame. The tribe gathered in rows, humming the song of uniting spirits. Zariah stepped forward first, proud and silent. Evan followed, nervous but steady. The elder priestess stood between them. "Tonight, the bond shall be sealed. Not by war, not by bloodshed, but by honor." She held up the sacred bands, by the old flame and the new future. As Zariah and Evan reached forward for the bands, Vekrol moved, silent, deadly. His blade hidden under his cloak, he stepped through the crowd toward the stage. But just as he raised his hand to strike, a deep, mechanical growl echoed across the crowd. A Zalarian guardian beast, half flesh and half machine, leapt from the side. It pinned Vekrol to the ground. Screams broke out. Guards rushed in. Zariah spun, hand on her sword. But she didn't need to act. The priestess had already known. "I sensed poison in the wind," she said coldly. "The sacred flame warned me last night. The gods knew betrayal was coming." Evan stared at the chaos, breathing hard. "Was that part of the ceremony?" Zariah gave a small laugh for the first time. "No, that part was real." Vekrol was dragged away, shouting curses, eyes locked on Evan. "This is not over. You are not one of us. She belongs to me. You hear me?" Zariah stepped forward and silenced him with just one look. "She belongs to no one." Then she turned back to Evan. "Let's finish what we started." The bands were placed on their wrists. A sharp heat spread through Evan's arm, but he didn't flinch. Zariah's face didn't move, but a tear escaped the corner of her eye. Not from pain, but from the weight of the moment. The bands lit gold, just like the flame. The tribe bowed. For the first time in generations, a Zalarian princess was bound to a human. And though enemies still lurked in the shadows, tonight the bond stood unbroken. The wedding was over. The bond had been sealed, but peace did not follow. While the tribe celebrated beneath the moons, whispering songs of fate and unity, others plotted in silence. Not just Vekrol, he was now locked away, but deeper forces. Old bloodlines, forgotten oaths, hidden leaders who believed a human could never be one of them. And worse, the outer clans had heard the news. The princess of Zalara had bonded with an earthborn. To them, that was war. Inside the royal tent, Evan sat on a cushion, adjusting the glowing wristband that now marked him as Zariah's chosen. "It still itches," he muttered. Zariah rolled her eyes. "That means the bond is alive. Be grateful." "I'd rather be alive without an alien bracelet itching my skin," he joked. But Zariah didn't laugh. Her face had gone hard, thoughtful, he noticed. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "Something feels wrong. Too quiet." Evan smirked. "I thought peace and quiet were a good thing." "Not on Zalara," she replied. Silence is what comes before the storm. She was right. That night, while the fire dancers performed near the cliffs, a horn blared in the distance, long, cold, sharp like a knife through the wind. Attack. Guards rushed to position. Children were pulled to shelter. Elder voices chanted old war songs. Zariah was already in armor before the alarm finished echoing. Evan ran to her. "What is it?" "Outer clans," she said quickly. "They're here, to challenge the bond." He blinked. "Challenge it? With words?" "With fire and steel," she said grimly. "They think I dishonored the bloodline by marrying an outsider." Evan glanced around. "So, what do we do?" She turned, looked him dead in the eye. "We fight." The battlefield formed quickly at the border of the village, a wide stone arena lit by sacred flame towers. Opposing warriors in black armor approached. They wore skull masks and bone spears. They were not here to talk. The leader, a woman with green eyes and a silver-marked blade, stepped forward. "I am Virakesh, sister to your fallen kings," she shouted. "You have broken the ancient vow. A Zalarian may bond with spirit with strength, but not with fragile flesh of earth." Zariah stood at the front, unshaken. The flame chose him. "The flame can be fooled," Virakesh snapped. Let us test it. Let us test him." Her soldiers roared. Zariah raised her blade. "Then test us both." What followed was not war. It was ritual combat. 2 champions against 3 of the enemy's best. If they survived, the bond would be honored by all clans. If they failed, their lives would be offered as apology. Evan swallowed hard. "I didn't sign up for this." "You did," Zariah said calmly, strapping a blade to his side. "When you caught that arrow." "I really need to stop catching things," he muttered. She turned to him. "Evan, stay behind me. Only strike when you must. Trust your instincts." He looked at her. Really looked. This wasn't just a warrior. This wasn't just a princess. This was someone ready to die for him. He took a deep breath. "All right. Let's do this." The fight began with no signal, no countdown, only movement. A spear flew through the air. Evan ducked just in time. Zariah was already moving, blades flashing. She danced like lightning, parrying, spinning, striking with clean, precise cuts. Evan did his best to keep up, blocking a strike here, dodging a blade there. He wasn't a soldier, but his hands remembered tools, speed, angles. He used that. One enemy tried to corner him. He grabbed a broken torch pole and swung with all his weight. The warrior fell. Zariah turned, surprised. "You actually hit him." "I'm full of surprises," Evan gasped. But it wasn't over. The leader, Virakesh, entered the ring. She moved like shadow and storm. Her blade was alive with electric power. Even Zariah struggled to block her strikes. Steel clashed. Sparks flew. Dust kicked up under their feet. Zariah fought with fury. "This bond is sacred," Virakesh roared. "This bond is blasphemy." Then Zariah slipped. A quick hit from the side. She fell to one knee. Virakesh raised her blade for a killing blow, but Evan ran forward. Without thinking, he jumped between them. The blade struck his arm. He didn't scream. He just grabbed Virakesh's arm and shoved the pressure bomb from before into her armor joint. He whispered, "You forgot. Humans invent things too." Boom. The small shockwave knocked her back. Zariah stood quickly and struck her down with a clean blow across the chest. Silence. Then the enemy warriors, knelt. The bond had been proven. Later, when the dust had settled, Evan sat with his arm wrapped in medic cloth. Zariah sat beside him, looking at his bruises, his torn robe, his dirty face. "You fought like a fool," she said softly. "I fight like a human," he replied. She looked at him for a long time. Then finally she said it, and I'm starting to be proud of that. The battlefield was quiet now. The bodies had been carried away. The sacred flames still burned. The warriors who once doubted the bond now stood in silence, watching the sunrise over the Zalarian cliffs. Zariah stood at the edge of the stone platform. her silver armor scratched and marked with dust and blood. Her long hair moved in the wind. Her gaze stayed on the horizon. Behind her, Evan limped forward. His arm was still bandaged. Every step ached, but he walked anyway, toward her. He stopped beside her and said quietly, "So, does this mean your people finally accept me?" Xeno didn't turn. They accepted the bond. Not the man? No, not yet, she replied. But that's not what matters anymore. Evan looked at her closely. What does matter then? She finally turned, and her eyes were softer than ever before. What I choose. For the first time, I get to decide. Not tradition, not blood, not fire. She stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. You were supposed to be a mistake, a foolish human who caught the wrong arrow. He smiled. I'm still pretty sure that's true. She didn't laugh. Instead, she touched his arm, gently, like it might break. And yet, you stood with me. You fought beside me. You bled for me. You even protected me when you could have run. Evan looked down, then back into her glowing gold eyes. I wasn't sure what I was doing, he said, but it felt like the right thing. Xeno tilted her head. Do you understand what this bond means now? Evan nodded slowly. It means we share everything. Pain, honor, life, choice. And choice, she repeated. That's the part they forget. She stepped back and held out her hand. In front of the tribe, I will still play the role they expect. I will be your princess, you will be my bonded. But here, she said, placing his hand against her heart, you are the man I chose, not because of fire, not because of law, but because I want you. The air between them was heavy with something deeper than duty. Evan didn't speak. He simply leaned forward and rested his forehead against hers. For the first time, there was no battle, no shouting, no doubt, only peace. Later that evening, a second ceremony was held. Not for law, not for flame, but for them. No elders, no ancient songs, just a quiet hill beneath the stars. Evan brought a small necklace made from metal, scraps and old earth wires. He placed it gently around her neck. Xeno brought him a stone charm from her mother's old armor, worn during the First War. She tied it to his wrist. We don't need witnesses, Evan whispered. No, she said. Because the sky is enough. They sat together side by side, watching the stars drift. Evan chuckled. You know, back home I fixed engines. Woke up at 5 a.m. every day. Had zero chance of dating, let alone marrying a space warrior. Xeno smirked. You think I plan to marry a human? They both laughed now, together. But peace never lasts forever. From far beyond the stars, a coded message was being sent. Not from Zalara, but from a hidden Earth station. Subject Evan Carter has survived. Target is now bonded to high-ranking Zalarian female. Proceed to Phase 2, retrieve him alive. A dark figure sat in front of a hologram of Evan's face, a smile curled on their lips. The human isn't just bonded, they whispered. He's valuable, and they don't even know it yet. Back on Zalara, Evan and Xeno stood together, on the same cliff where it all began. He looked down at the spot where he had caught the arrow. Funny, isn't it? He said. 1 second, I thought I was going to die. Next second, I met you. Xeno raised an eyebrow. You really are lucky I didn't aim for your throat. He laughed. I think catching your arrow was the best mistake of my life. Leaned in and whispered, it wasn't a mistake. It was the start of everything. Then she kissed him, soft and certain. And this time, it wasn't because of sacred law. It was because she wanted to.